I'm recording. Okay, I've got it. Okay, let me pull up. Let me share Dr. Okay. Okay. Everybody see the agenda? Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Revis, if you'll go ahead and open up with
Well, welcome
welcome.
to week 3, and it's good to see everybody here. And if you, as you're signing on and logging on, go ahead and be sure you turn your camera on and your audio, or mute yourself, I should say. You'll need your audio. I want to just do a few reminders. If you'll scroll down to the bottom and let's look at our class norms. And while he's doing that, I just have to say how pleased I am with your attentiveness last week. We had a lot of things to go over, and you guys, I can tell when you're taking notes, and you were taking notes furiously.
Mhm.
Don't forget, these are always recorded. So if you need to go back, if you didn't catch something, that's why we want to record them and get them uploaded to you so you can go back and fill in anything missing. We always like for you to use those recordings. If you have a question about something that we went over in class, you can go back and look at that recording. And we try to keep pretty close to the agenda, so maybe you wouldn't have to go through the whole recording if there's something specific that you miss. But I do want to thank you for your attentiveness and holding that chat box till the end, and just giving us your all. We used to do this class 2 nights a week for the first 4 weeks. And we have tried our best last semester and this semester to try to cram it all in one night. Now, even though we've been going over an hour, promise you that's better than having 2 nights of your week tied up. So if you will grant us some grace during these first 4 weeks, the time frame will shrink that we will be online with you. But again, that's better than having 2 nights a week taken up, I believe. And with that said, Dr. Stedman's going to start us out by sharing some comments, not a lot of details, but just some overall comments about Task 1 and peer reviews.
Well, well, the first thing, and I can speak from my class. The first thing is all of AAPSL Task 1 for instructor review was in on time. Several of them ahead of time. So to me, that's a plus. However, don't 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 get to the point though that you rush it ahead of time, that you could have caught some careless stuff that you did along the way. So give it, when you push the button for it to go for my review, make sure that you know that you have done your very, very best to make sure that it's as accomplished as possible when you send it to me. It'll save you a lot of trouble along the road. If you go ahead and and this is for all of you, if you just go ahead and try to do it to the best of your ability the first time. Um, Dr. Revis, I do want to say that when we do give you feedback, please the give it a lot of thought. Go back. If we have identified areas of concern with APA, or say APA capitalization, then spend some time going back and reviewing that. Dr. Hamilton's going to talk about that again in a few minutes. Just go back and use it as a time to reflect. Now, once we have looked at it, make sure that you give your peer that will be looking at your work for that week, give them time to give you some feedback as well, because they may see something that we didn't see or you didn't see that will help you to 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 to, to better put it together for the next review. So, we realized it was the first time, but and those first time jitters should be over with. But those are some things that you need to consider. Overall, Dr. Revis, I had them from the top, nothing to the bottom, from the top to the middle. And that's, even if it's in the middle, I know as graduate students already in a master's program, you think, um, you know, I can't take that. You have an opportunity to fix it. However, if you continue to send it back to us over and over and again, you're not going to get the full points. Now, the second time, you possibly can get the full points if you pay attention to it and really do what you're supposed to do. You possibly can get your full points even with a second review. But when it comes back to us a third time and a fourth time, then you're not paying attention to some things, and we have to begin looking at taking away some of your points as a result of that. I feel like that this coming week, having gone through it the first time, you'll do much better with that. The peer reviews, um, overall, I would say 95% of my peer reviews, Dr. Revis, were on point. You really put a lot of quality time into it. I do want to point out every area must be identified, and you do not have the option of saying, I do not see any weaknesses. You don't have that option yet. There may come a time that we will give you some flexibility. You're not at that point yet. So your job is to constructively provide feedback in all areas. Okay. But overall, I think I think it was a good beginning overall. Um, I do want to say, look under what we've got about for task one, and I added this today, Dr. Revis. That's what I added today. The task one final revision is due to Blackboard for a final instructor review no later than tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. You know what you've got to do. And why tomorrow evening at 6 p.m.? Because if we can't look at it this last time, then if you wait until Sunday night, guess what? You can't turn both of them in at the same time. So we're going to make this a standard. Work that has been turned in on Sunday night has to be completed and sent to us for a final review no later than Thursday evening by 6 o'clock. That gives us time to look at it and to get it back to you if there's anything else that you possibly would need to do. Okay, Dr. Revis, that's all I have to say about that. And that will be, as long as you're doing evidence work, task work, that will be the same process every week from this point on. Okay.
Well, I think some of you were a little shocked at your grades. Maybe we um, were a little low, and then I thought, well, maybe you don't really understand. Yeah, if you get a 25 out of 50, that means you've got some work to do, a lot of revisions to make. Now, I worked until late Sunday night to make sure everybody got feedback Sunday night. So that gives you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and to 6 o'clock on Thursday to make those revisions. And you put them right back in that same Dropbox for instructor review. And if you've made all the revisions, that score is changed and you can go up to the 50 points. Now, if you don't go up the full 50 points, we may send you on if we think that it meets the base of acceptable work. It may not get a 4 from the evaluator, but we may move you on to final evaluation, which is due Sunday night at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m.
Sunday at 6.
At 6. So anyway, you know, don't let that low score wig you out. What should wig you out is if you're late on it or incomplete. Do not be incomplete. I had about 3, Dr. Stedman, that they were incomplete. And not only do you get points deducted that you cannot recover, but you know, you're having to have me look at it 2 and 3 times, and that's not fair. You need to be on time with your work. Some of you had a little problem about where to put your assignments, and so we'll be glad at the end of the session tonight if you feel like you need a refresher as to where to put everything and place everything, then we will stay online with you. But you need to try to make sure that you're submitting your best work by that deadline.
Right. You've gone through it the first time. So again, this week should be much better for you because whatever the jitters are, you should have them over with. Okay. Um, I'm going to stop share. Well, let's look at the rest of it. Dr. Hamilton's going to talk briefly, just a few APA reminders, and I've talked with her already, and she knows some of the things that Dr. Revis and I were looking at. Then we're going to go back and do a recap of AAPSL Task 2 that we introduced to you last week, because that work will be due by this Sunday for review. And then we're going to introduce you to task 3, because remember we said you would always be working on a task. You'll be submitting one for a final grade. You'll be putting one in there for our review, and you should always know what the next step is, or at least have it in your mind. So we will introduce you to task 3. However, you probably won't get to task 3. Most of you won't. And we'll do that in full detail next Wednesday. And then the last of the class, and we've allowed enough time that Dr. Hamilton can actually really begin, talking to you about your internship requirements, because that's important now. We've got to get started on that. So I'm going to stop share, Dr. Hamilton, and if you would just give a recap of the things, and you know what to do with APA.
Okay, hello. So with APA, so since we didn't really get to everything last week, I've left everything under week 2. I did speak with Dr. Stedman and Dr. Revis, and just some reminders. Remember that reference section must have a hanging indent, and your reference section is double spaced within the reference, and it is double spaced between the references. Remember in the PowerPoint I shared last week, which is under week 2 in your internship shell, you can find the video from the Dover Library, and it will show you how to create those hanging indents. Unless something in your template is single spaced, because you are not changing your template, unless something is in the template that is single spaced, then everything is double spaced. There are some things like directions and instructions in the template that are single. Those stay. If they're in the template single, you keep it single spaced. Otherwise, double. Remember that in APA 7th edition, a lot of stuff's not capitalized, right? Like Kathy Revis, math teacher, lowercase, principal, lowercase. So make sure that you're paying attention to that and not capitalizing things that should not be capitalized. Very important. We talked about last week as well. Numbers 0 to 9 are written in word form. Anything greater than 9, so 10 or above, can be a numeral unless it starts or ends a sentence. If it starts or ends a sentence, it must be in word form. So if you start a sentence and it says 75% of blah, blah, that cannot be a 75 and a percent mark. That must be spelled out. But now if 75% is in the middle of a sentence, that's going to be the numerals, 75 and a percent mark. Some of you have like always written out the word percent. Some of you are using the symbol like in the middle of the sentence. Just be consistent with that. Remember your punctuation. Make sure you're really checking punctuation and you only have one space after punctuation. Also very important are your parenthetical citations. So if you say that the sky is blue and you're referencing Danny Stedman, 2012, the sky is blue, parentheses, Stedman, comma, 2012, close the parentheses, period. So the period does not go after the blue at the end of the sentence, and it does not go inside the closing parentheses. It would say, the sky is blue, parentheses, Stedman, comma, 2012, closure parentheses, period out here. So make sure that you pay attention to that. And also remember capitalization within the reference section. Go back and look at the things that are not capitalized as well in the reference section. Those are the main things. And then again, in week 2, you do have access to this checklist that we created for you. Please, please, please print the checklist. Please use the checklist. This will help you immensely. It will help you with doing your peer reviews, and it will also help you in your own editing. I mean, even just like reading through it will help you. Like, here's an example of the parenthetical citation. I don't have a sentence before it, but you can see where the period goes. And those are small nuances of things that are maybe not always like overtly obvious, noticeable, but it are those small nuances are like the things that really do matter with all this. So please, please, please print this and use this. Dr. Stedman, Dr. Revis.
Okay, thank you. And again, just remember, the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. But you've got to, you have no choice but to practice it. So just make sure that let me see.
And I would even recommend that when you're doing peer reviews, that you take that editing checklist out when you're doing your peer reviews. If you learn it well enough to give feedback to your peers, you're going to learn it good enough for yourself when you're writing. So that's just another idea.
Revis, Dr. Hamilton, I want to pull this up too. I've had it for the last 2 weeks and just we never got to it. So I think it's important that we look at this. Everything that we will be pulling up now and what Dr. Hamilton spoke is in your course shell. You can find it. This is under the AAPSL resources and where your helpful hints and other documents are. But this is what this program requires. Now, I don't know if you heard it at the very beginning of the program, but I don't know if you've thought about it anymore because you've been dealing with so much else. You remember, you're going through Dr. Revis and me now. We're getting you to a point that we can say, okay, at a minimum, your work has to be proficient. That means you're meeting requirements. We always strive for everything to be accomplished, but it has to be proficient before we can move you on. Now, once it goes through us, I'm going to give my students a grade. Dr. Revis is going to give her students a final grade. But then at the end of this, you're going to do 5 tasks. Remember, we talked about that for the AAPSL. When you get through with all 5 tasks, you're going to put them all together into one document to be submitted back for our final review. Then we're going to tell you to put it in the Turnitin process, and it's going to go through that. Then after that, we're going to tell you to submit to Taskstream for evaluation. That's about the 6th week that we do this. And then once it goes there, I don't see it anymore. Dr. Revis doesn't see it anymore. Dr. Hamilton won't see it. It goes to an outside evaluator. We don't know who they are. And then they look at your work. So why do we push you so hard? Because we know what is expected. We have worked with these evaluators for years now, whoever they are, and we know we just know how nitpicky they are on things. So if they're nitpicky, we have to be nitpicky up front about stuff so that we can make sure that you are as accomplished as you can possibly be. So that's a part of the driving force behind what we do. It's not that we want to be mean or whatever. We know what's expected. So please, please just respect that and know that whatever we're doing is for your good. It's for the best results at the end. So you've done AAPSL Task 1 already, and you will be finishing it up this week. For it to be accomplished or to be considered to be accomplished, because I can't think for that outside evaluator, neither can Dr. Revis or Dr. Hamilton, but for it to be considered to be accomplished, it has to have all of this. Research on PLCs must include a minimum of 3 sources and be written in APA format. Okay, we've told you that. Now notice the connecting word, the conjunction and. It also must, the candidate documents PLC members and their roles, strengths, and other significant details. And now we've had them to go back before and they said, well, we just, it got a 3 instead of a 4 because they said we didn't think that was strong enough. Dr. Hamilton, I think you experienced last semester, one student even got a 2.
Like we take that so personally.
We do.
Yes.
Yes.
And there have been times that we have argued, no, sometimes we win those arguments, sometimes we don't, but I know sometimes it feels like we're being so nitpicky with that, but it's because we know how stringent the evaluators are, and we don't want you, we want you to have the very best score possible.
Right.
We want everyone to have a 4. And it's hurtful to you when it comes back and you have to redo, and you only get one shot back. And so that's a problem too. So
Right.
it's hurtful if it comes back to you, and it's hurtful to us. So it's because we care.
Right. And look at this next conjunction. And the candidate leads the PLC in a meeting to discuss the vision and purpose of the PLC. All of this, we've gone over it multiple times, and most of you have done that well. You've got to clean it up, but you've done it well. And then the final thing. Now, this is where you mess up sometimes. The candidate used basic technologies to communicate with other members of the PLC. And I don't know who it was, but one of my students in her peer review reminded a student that was an area that they felt like that they could improve in. So I really liked that they paid attention to that, and your peer reminded you of that. But this, this is what you've got to do to be accomplished, and then you can see if it's lower than proficient. Guess what? We can't send you on. And then I'm not going to go over it, but I want you to look. It's for when you start on task 2 this week. I want you to look. You need to pull this up and say, okay, to be accomplished, this is what I have got to do. Look at this last column and make sure that you check it off, like the checklist Dr. Hamilton was talking about with APA. Check it off. Say, I know I feel good with that. I know I feel good with that after we go over it. So that is in your Blackboard shell for your use. Now, let's go back to the helpful hints document. Remember, you've got the template. The template you must use. That's in you must use it. Remember again, if it's in black, it stays. You don't mess with it. It's single space, the directions, all of that stays just like it is. If it's in yellow, remember you have to write something, but any yellow highlighting or whatever you take away. And if it's in red, remember it's information that you need to consider using, and then you take all the red out. Now, when you go to task 2 this week, we don't need to see task 1. Task 1, you put it somewhere else. You save it somewhere else. Now, I would keep a running document that I am saving, because you've got to put it all back together eventually anyway. We just don't need to see it. We saw task 1 this past week. All we need to see this week submitted to us and your peers needs to see is task 2. Do not put task 1 in there. Do not show all of the incomplete work for task 3, 4, and 5. All we want to see is your work for task 2. With that in mind, let's look at where you begin. Your data, your heading is data collection strategies. Now you're beginning to work, because your goal is you've got to determine this week what the most pressing need is in your school. Now, it can't be what I think. I know you probably already know what you think, and you may be right. It can't be what your principal thinks. They may be right, but you've got to go through the process and determine what that most pressing need is. Then your principal can help guide you in deciding what direction you're going to take from there. But this is your data collection strategies. That's your heading. You're going to work with the selected PLC team formed in task 1 to determine the strategies that will be used to collect the data to determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. The narrative work for this section will discuss those strategies. As long as it's a strategy and it's applicable to the process, there's no right or wrong with it if it's going to help you get to the final task of determining what that most pressing need is. So, Amy, when you're leading your PLC, Amy can say she'll go into her PLC and she'll have some already prepared ideas. You should always go into your PLC as the leader with some prepared ideas. Then you open it up. Dr. Revis is on Amy's team and Dr. Hamilton's on Amy's team. Dr. Revis is going to say, I like that, Amy, but did y'all think about so-and-so? Dr. Revis is going to come up with something that Amy hadn't thought about. And so is Dr. Hamilton. Amy's going to lead that PLC. She's going to come in with something, but then the team is going to give you suggestions as well. That's the whole purpose of coming. And then what Amy's going to do is she's going to put it all in narrative form, and she's going to simply talk about what they have talked about in the meeting as what they're going to do, the strategies to put in place. You're starting a plan. You're beginning to develop a plan. And there's examples of this here. Your second heading is the criteria and the process for identifying the most pressing need. Once the team and you have determined the strategies for collecting data, how are you going to do it? You're going to decide what criteria and what process or processes will be used for identifying the most pressing need. The narrative work for this section will discuss the criteria and the process. You're brainstorming a lot of stuff up at number 1. Now you're beginning to synthesize things and starting to bring it together, because it starts out wide at the top, and remember, it's going to narrow down to a point, because the point is going to be at the bottom, upside down triangle. It's going to be your most pressing need. So you're beginning to narrow it down. Narrative word. Then the third thing is collaborative data analysis. So I want you to look at that word collaborative. That means Amy's not going to do this by herself. It's a team effort. She's going to lead that team, and the team is going to work under her leadership to analyze this data. As teachers, as coaches, whatever, you've done this many times in your data dives or whatever you call it in your school. Once steps 1 and 2 have been completed, the team and you will take a detailed look of all data that has been gathered. You should thoroughly disaggregate the data by looking at all groups, subgroups, etc. You look at all the puzzle pieces. You put it out there and you look at all the puzzle pieces. The narrative work for this selection or for this section is going to discuss this process. Now you still haven't determined what the most pressing need is. You're beginning to look at all the groups and the subgroups. and look at the language. This gives you some ideas of places that you can look. Look at EVOS, and I know you've heard that a million times in public education. Now, your heading is finally most pressing need. Once step 3 has been completed, the team and you will determine the most pressing need based on the collaborative data analysis. It's going to be what the analysis shows based on data and test data. The narrative work for this section will identify the most pressing need and why. So what you've got to do, you've got to say something about our team determined, blah, 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 blah. You're going to say, and finally, you're going to say what the most pressing need is. You're going to simply say, we determined the most pressing need is, and then you're going to fill in the blank, and then you're going to say why. You've got to justify why you said that in this narrative work. And that is that gets you to your most pressing need. And then Dr. Revis, if you'll take it from here, and you've narratively done everything at this point. You're going to become artists at this point. Dr. Revis is going to talk about it.
Well, first of all, this task 2 has 2 prompts. Task 1 only had 1 prompt. You have to do both. As Dr. Stedman went through the prompt 1, it's all about narrative work. You're telling the story narratively. Now, why the helpful hints document? Let me just share with you. The helpful hints document is aligned to that state rubric, the evaluator rubric. We took that rubric, predominantly Dr. Stedman took that rubric and decomposed it and put it together in a manageable way for you. This semester, you will get helpful hints. You won't have to decompose the rubric on your own, but we would like for you to start looking at what the rubric says and what you're doing in the helpful hints so you can get an idea of how we decomposed it and made section headings and made sure everything is in your paper. If you will follow your helpful hints, you're going to meet the rubric. Okay? That's what I want to say. But prompt 2 is about telling this story of your data dive graphically. So you're going to pull data from your state report cards. Don't recreate those charts and tables. Guys, if you can take a picture of them, take a picture of them. And, well, a screenshot, I should say, and put them in your paper. Don't put your phone up to the computer screen and take a photo. That does not come out professionally, and it does not look professionally done to your evaluators. So if you can copy and paste or take a screenshot of those tables and graphs that are on your state report card, then by all means do it. But you're only going to use the things that you and your team are analyzing and working through. But it's multiple charts, tables, and graphs. Now remember, for this class, we call all of those things figures. So you need to understand how to set up a figure in APA, how you do the figure number, the title, etc. So you're going to graphically represent your work, but guys, it's just not graphics. You just can't put an arbitrary table out there and think we know what it is. You've got to add some narrative work. You need to introduce it, introduce why it's here, and then put your table, and then talk a little bit about what the table says. Okay? I call that the sandwich method. Introduce it, put it in, and then talk about it. Don't just put a table out there, a series of tables that we don't know what it means or what you're trying to show. The narrative part is how you used it and what your PLC gleaned from these data tables. And then, of course, you have your reference section and your appendices. So once you do prompts 1 and 2, task two is complete, you got to do both prompts, then that's when you schedule a meeting with your principal. And that's when you share your findings to the principal and or leadership team. Now, that's an extra step this week that you've not been taking or had to take last week. So if your principal is part of your PLC, which Dr. Stedman encouraged you to have your principal be part of it, then all you simply have to do is a disclaimer that you did not have to do a presentation to your principal because he or she is a part of your PLC. So let's scroll on and look at a little bit of it, some examples of what this may look like. The first heading is data presentation, and this is where you could put an introductory paragraph in there if you wanted to talk about, you made a present. If your principal is not part of that team, then you're going to have to set up and do that presentation to your admin, or you can say in this beginning section here that he or she was part of your PLC, so no additional presentation was necessary. But you're doing screenshot. Now, this person, I think they happen to do this particular meeting, their PLC meeting on a Zoom. So she starts out with a screenshot just to show it's a Zoom.
Dr. Revis,
And
this was during COVID that this was done when
okay.
they were not in school.
And then um, she's going to introduce that table or figure. She puts the figure in. Notice how it is formatted. Figure 3 is bold. And then your title is in italics. And then she's going to talk about what she wants or what the team determined was useful in that table. Or they may say that we didn't find this information useful at all. In that case, I don't know that I would put it in, but you can. And then you scroll on down, and then she's going to introduce another table, another figure. And of course, I can tell that's a screenshot right from school report cards. You don't put notes at the bottom of the table unless you are putting a note about some interpretive information. We're pretty familiar with these, so use your notes sparingly. You need to take a paragraph and share what you gleaned from this table.
Make sure that any of your graphics that you use, make sure that they are legible, that we can read them, that whoever's looking at it can read them. Sometimes people put them in so small that all of this, you can't tell anything. Make sure that they are, and make sure that everything is presented in a very professional manner.
Correct. So it's not just one data set that you're going to be looking at. You're going to look at multiple data sets. There should be multiple tables and charts. Remember, we're calling them all figures. That's not 100% accurate, but that's what we're going to do here. And this happens to be something from their growth data. And then scroll on down and you would see then she's doing a comparison for multiple years. And for some reason these went off or
Right.
went out. But anyway, there's some trend data, I guess I should say, in that particular figure. And then she's got another figure here where she's targeting and honing in on eighth grade. Now,
The
I
main
want
thing,
you,
Dr. Revis, is that we put these in here. They may not be perfect, but they show you they're a model for you to know what you need to do.
I want you to look at this last paragraph. The last paragraph is very important for evaluators. They are not going to look around to find some of this information. The last paragraph, collaboratively, the PLC members concluded that eighth grade math PLC and they put their largest area of need. You have to make that stand out.
Okay.
And the best way to stand it out is you put it at the end. You would put it at the end of prompt 1 because there's a heading there, and you put it back again at the end of prompt 2.
Okay, I'm going to stop share for a minute.
Do we have any
Before
questions you want to ask? Do some question and answer now,
Yeah,
Dr.
let's do
M?
that.
Dr.
Let's do that now. Yeah. And
I
Dr.
have a question.
Jamie,
So you said that we don't turn in task one. I understand that, but do we still turn in the very front page with task two, or just task two?
you just do task 2. You'll
Okay.
you'll save that front page in your school profile. All of that will be saved when we tell you to combine it at the end of the program. I
Okay,
mean,
so just start with task two.
at the end of, yeah, all we want to see is
Okay.
task 2. Yeah.
You're just
I
cutting,
have,
you're just
sorry.
cutting it apart.
I have a question. So in the first one, when we did the references and the appendices, do I continue to add to that, or do I make a new one for task 2?
You just put the references and the appendices that you need for task 2. However, Megan, you can go ahead and you can number your you can number your the appendixes. You can number them so that they'll flow whenever you put it all together. You don't have
Okay.
to. They'll all be, you understand what everybody
Yes.
understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Like if you finish referencing Appendix C in Task 1, your first appendix in Task 2 would be
We do.
C Appendix
Yeah,
D.
yeah, yeah.
But we don't want to have to siphon through all that.
Okay, I have a question. So I just want to make sure I'm right. Did you say that that last graph that you just showed, our pressing need, that should be in the beginning and at the end? Because
Not
what
the
were you saying
graph.
about the beginning?
Not the
graph
graphs.
the graph is only shows up only in prompt 2.
Mm-hmm.
In prompt 1, where you're describing everything narratively, that's the last section of prompt 1, where you're identifying your area of the biggest area of need. And in prompt 2, the last narrative piece you have again is reiterating your area of need that you're going to address. Now, I will have to say, Dr. Stedman, a few of my people um, last week in task 1 kind of already have decided what they're going to do without even doing a data dive. And I think many times that happens because several of you are already administrators and several of you are instructional coach and instructional support people. So you know your data really well, but you've got to show if your principal tells you, I want you to look at third grade reading, that's fine. Look at third grade reading. But if they set that tone for you, and this is an example that's in the helpful hints, her principal went ahead and identified which area, content area, but they looked at all areas and they came back to the principal. They did what the principal asked because that principal knew her data, but they looked at all different kinds of data. If your principal says, no, I only want this PLC to look at third grade reading, that's fine. But you are going to have to dive into data by subgroup in third grade reading, by curriculum strand. You're going to have to turn it inside out and upside down if that's what you're doing.
And another thing, once you determine after you've gone through the process that your team says the most pressing need is, when you meet with your principal and they say, well, I understand what you're saying, because you're going to tell the truth. You're going to say, this is what it shows. Say, well, yeah, I understand that, but this is what I want you to do. You must write that in your narrative work. The PLC team and I determined that the most pressing need is. However, after meeting with my administrator, my principal, they have directed the PLC to focus on. And you put that disclaimer in there as well in your narrative work. But you still stick to the fact that you went through the process and it showed that this is determined to be the most pressing need based on your and the PLC's work.
Dr.
I have a
Stedman,
quick
I mean,
question.
Does that, sorry.
I have an assistant principal on my PLC for this. Do I still need to present to my head principal for the school?
I would ask Jacob, I would ask my principal to step in and join the meeting when you meet with them, you're with your PLC this time, because the assistant principal most of the time cannot make those final decisions.
Okay,
So
so I
I
do
would,
need to set one up.
even
We
though
met
they're not on
today,
the
so
team, I would invite them. If you can invite them to be a part of that meeting with your PLC, that'll save you a lot of time as well.
we went ahead and met today so I could get ahead of it. But I'll find time with him this week.
Yeah, okay.
Guys, do you know
So
how to
if
guys, do you know how to raise your virtual hand online? It would really help us, and we'll make sure we call on everybody.
Okay, Dr. Hamilton, you were saying something though.
I just wanted to just throw in there. So the purpose of this, let's just say you get hired as a principal and you're at a school with 300 high need students in a Title I school. You don't have an assistant principal and you have a lot of turnover and a lot of new beginning teachers in your building. This process is to teach you how to go into a new school as a new administrator and really be able to look at data and determine what's working well for us that we want to continue, right? You don't want to quit doing the stuff that's doing well, right? And what is it that we really do need to focus on? So if your principal does have something in mind, say, that's great, but can I still like go through this process? Because this is your time to learn with the support of your principal as a supervisor to be able to just learn this process, practice this process in a safe place with people that you already work with and know and trust. Because also when you're the new principal in a new building, it's likely you're not going to know anybody in that building. And so that trust and those relationships are not built. So this is that like safety net of a place for you to be able to practice this and learn this. So just sharing with them that this is your learning opportunity, right? Even if you do what they want you to do in the end, this is your learning opportunity and sort of a safety net kind of place. So if you're thrown out there to the wolves, you
Right.
have practice.
Good advice, Dr. Hamilton. Kelsey?
So I'm a teacher. I'm not an instructional coach or an admin already, but my school spends a lot of time going over data. Like we have a built-in PD period every morning that we go over data for our school and our district and all that stuff. So I put in my paper already that we had chosen math, but that is based off of data. Do I just need to like take that sentence out from task 1 or just go through task 2 how we chose math?
Well, Kelsey, I will tell you this. In task 2, your evaluators are going to want to see that you know how to present data and to do a data dive. Okay. So if you have decided, your school has decided that you're going to do a specific grade level, specific content area, then as I said before, your tables are going to have to go deeper into subgroups and curriculum strands.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And Kelsey, there's so many sub areas of math that you can focus on instead of math as just a general
Right.
area too. So I would look
Right.
at that. Okay,
Right.
Salida,
Good evening. Should this meeting be recorded?
it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
But
It
one of the
doesn't,
good things, Salita, that you need to do and always get used to doing, have somebody take some photographs
right.
when you are pulling together your PLC, because those can be good artifacts that you can add into your appendices, and they can be useful later on when you're building your competency folio that Dr. Hamilton will talk to you about.
Okay, Shania,
Yes. So I'm focusing on K3 Amplify data, and they don't take like a EOG, so it's not an EVOS. So we have to go through Amplify. And my principal has gave me access to that, but there's not like a chart that puts all of them together. It's kind of separated. Would it be fine if I took the information and put it in one chart
Oh, yeah.
and added it, or would I need
Yes.
to add each thing?
You will have to make your own charts or tables or
Okay.
figures or whatever. So you can put it in however you presented it to your PLC. However makes sense as you're working through and doing your data dive.
Okay,
It's
and they
in-
did give me one chart, but it has teachers' names on it. Would be fine if I just blurred those names out and added that
Just
as
take,
well.
yes, just redact them.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Amy? Amy, do you have a question?
So I am also using Amplify data. When it comes to, I'm stating in my paper that I'm using the Amplify program data. Am I citing that?
That would be good if you could, yes.
Sure.
So that'll
Yes.
go in my references as
Yeah,
well.
That would go in
yeah,
your references. Yeah.
yeah. You can't go wrong by putting it in there.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, guys, I think you give us a thumbs up. Do you grasp the concept of what you've got to do this week with task 2? If that's the case, just give us a thumbs up. You feel like you can maneuver your way through it based on what you already know. Okay?
Dr.
Well,
Stedman,
yes. Hey,
I'm
Daniel.
sorry, I had raised my hand, but I don't think you
Okay,
saw
I'm
me.
sorry. I didn't see
But I
that.
just wanted to give a piece of maybe useful information for the ones that are using in-class data, just because I found that it might be helpful if you download some of the data as a CSV file. Some of the reports you can and some of them you can't. It might be easier to make a table out of that.
Okay, great.
Just-
Thank you for that information. That helps a lot. Okay. Very quickly, and Dr. Hamilton, I'm going to turn it over to you in just a moment. We're not going to camp out here. Very quickly, you just need to understand while you're doing task 2 this week, how it's going to lead into task 3. And again, it's got 2 prompts. You're going to do some research next week, and Dr. Revis and Dr. Hamilton's going to help with helping you understand the difference between the lit review and an annotated bibliography. You'll have to do a bibliography. You will have identified your problem in task 2. In task 3, you're going to begin looking for solutions to your problem. So task 3 is actually all about doing the research to find out what is out there that is the best practices, anything that's going to identify or help alleviate or help improve that problem that you've identified. So everything that you do in task 3 is going to be based on finding solutions. Solutions. What does the research say? It's not what Dr. Revis says. It's not what Dr. Hamilton says. It's not what Dr. Stedman says. What does the research say? And we're going to dig into this next week. And then narrative work in the first part. And then when you get to prompt 2, again, we're going to tell you you've got to dig in there with graphic organizers, multiple visuals that you will use to help better understand what you've written in task 1. So again, you're going to identify the problem this week. You're going to begin looking for solutions next week.
And
Dr.
let
Revis,
me just say this. Educators are known, we're problem solvers. So I promise you, when you have your PLC meeting, that they're going to want to start throwing out solutions. Just hold them off and tell them we're going to do that next. We're going to do some thorough research. And we're really going to dive into what the research does say. So it's not what's happening down the street or, across the district. We're going to look at what research says according to your need that we need to be considering as far as instructional strategies and online programs. So hold off them talking about solutions until the next week.
and don't let them chase rabbits. As the leader, you reel them back in if they start getting off task. Just do that, okay? Now, Dr. Hamilton, we've covered a lot, but you've listened well, and I can tell that I see the lights coming on, Dr. Revis. And thank y'all. Remember, we told you, give us 3 weeks, and you're here still. That's a testament. You're here still. And starting this week and moving into next week, you're really going to begin understanding how all of this comes together. Jaquetta, before Dr. Hamilton moves on, what do you have?
My only question now is, so when we have this meeting, do we need to have, I heard someone ask about being recorded, but do we need to have agenda and everything else for that as well?
You always have an agenda
For every meeting?
with every meeting. You remember that's going to be a standard part of what you put in your appendices. Okay, for every time you meet with your PLC, all of that should become artifacts in the work that you're doing.
And not just for this coursework, but as a
Right.
as a school leader, you don't
Right.
ever need to have a meeting that you don't have a planned agenda, that
Right.
you know what you're going to do and where you're going.
Right. And well, as principals, that becomes a part of your evaluation, right,
Right.
Dr. Hamilton? So it is. Okay, Dr. Hamilton, it's yours.
Okay, thanks. So we're gonna sort of switch gears and we're gonna talk a little about your internship and just a very even smaller amount about the competency folio. Your internship and your competency folio will both be around the 21 competencies for school leaders. So before I say anything else, I want to go ahead and tell you that I did hear from Dr. Stone this evening, and you should be getting an email from Watermark, Watermark, and that is going to be your Taskstream account. It's a brief window of time that you have to claim your account, like 48 hours. Please check your email. If you have an email from Watermark, please go in and claim your Taskstream account. The instructions should be in the email, so please go in and do that. Has anyone gotten an email so far from Watermark? Oh, good. So that tells me that you should see that. So please, there'll be 2 things you'll do with your Taskstream account. That's where you're going to submit all the work you're doing for Dr. Revis and Dr. Stedman in the end when it's finished and they give you permission to submit. And it's also going to be where you're going to create a competency folio, which we're going to talk about next week. The first part is to get your Taskstream account open. So that is that. So good. It's coming through. That's perfect. Great. So what we primarily want to talk about tonight are those 21 competencies and how that's really going to feed into the internship work that you're doing. So let's just sort of start with the end in mind for just a minute. And let's look at the North Carolina standards for school executives. Now, my favorite comprehension strategy is repeated words. So when students can't hardly read any of the words, right? If they just look through a passage and they look for repeated words and highlight the repeated words, that will sort of give you the main idea of what you're reading. So let's look at the executive, the North Carolina Standards for School Executives. So as a principal in North Carolina, this is your evaluation instrument. This is what you are evaluated on. So there are 8 standards of leadership. So everybody with your mics off, okay, read these with me. Standard 1. And when we're reading, I want you to look for those repeated words. And when you see what the repeated word is, I want you to write it down on the side somewhere, okay? Let's read this together. Standard 1, strategic leadership. Okay, I heard you all. Standard 2, instructional leadership. Standard 3, cultural leadership. Are we getting a repeated word? Standard 4, human resource leadership. Standard 5, managerial leadership. Standard 6, external development leadership. Standard 7, oh, I skipped it, sorry, micropolitical leadership. And Standard 8, academic achievement leadership. Okay, put in the chat, what is our main idea in our evaluation instrument? What is it? I'm looking in the chat. Leadership. That's right. Leadership. That's what it's all about, because that's what this job is about, leadership in all those areas. Now, very interestingly, you will find that in that same document that we just looked at, and we're going to go back to it, in that same document, when we scroll on down, it starts listing our 21 competencies, as you see right there, right? You see them, they're all highlighted. But this is very interesting. It says about the 8 leadership qualities that we just read about, right? It says right here that the principal may or may not personally possess all of those items, all of those 8 leadership items, but they can effectively and efficiently execute them. Although the principal may not personally possess all of them, they're still responsible for all of the effective use of those in their leadership practices. And then we go on down to the competencies that are listed below, the 21 competencies. It says they're not so obvious in those practices, but they can be applied to multiple practices and are absolutely essential for all school executives to possess. So those 8 you might not have, but you can sort of delegate that and work around it. But let's read this part right here together. But for these 21 competencies, let's read that together. They are absolutely essential for all school executives to possess. So these 21 competencies in your work as a principal are non-negotiable. You have to have these, you have to have these thoroughly, you have to know them, you have to understand them. And this is what we're going to be working with in your internship and in your competency folio. So what are these 21? So let's read these together as well. The first one is communication. Read that with me with your mic off. Okay. Then we have change management, conflict management, creative thinking, customer focus, delegation, dialogue and inquiry, emotional intelligence, environmental awareness. We're going to the next page. Global perspective, judgment, organizational ability, personal ethics and values, personal responsibility for performance, responsiveness, results orientation, sensitivity, systems thinking, technology, time management, and visionary. So those are those 21 competencies that we're going to be looking at through the lens of your internship, and that we're going to be looking at through your competency folio in Taskstream. We'll talk about that more next week. So let's just look, and this is all in week 2 because we were going to go over this last week and then we didn't get the chance. So this is all in week 2. And if you go to week 3, it just says refer to week 2. So here are your internship requirements. So this is an overview. So who? Okay, it's you and your site supervisor, but it's mostly you, right? Your site supervisor, your principal needs to direct, they need to provide opportunities, they need to know what it is you're expected to do. They can make suggestions. They need to monitor your work in this area to help you grow in this area. And also they have to attest that what you put on your log that you really did. So they need to know that you've done these things, and they need to know what it is you need to do so they can provide opportunities for you. So what? So the who, the what, you're going to engage in school leader executive experiences, these leadership roles and experiences that are reflective of our 21 competencies. So these are going to be real world leadership opportunities. These are not things you're doing as a teacher. These are leadership opportunities to give you experience in developing these competencies. Because remember, as a school leader, you must possess these competencies to be successful. These are not negotiable. You're going to see how these 22 competencies infiltrate all areas of school leadership. And it's almost like a baklava, a layer, and how it layers over in all areas. And many of the competencies roll over and layer over. It's not just here and there, black and white, this category, that category, but it truly is a layering. You're going to show how you have had experiences with those competencies through the different areas of leadership, and you're going to document your experience of these 21 competencies on your internship log. And you're going to document those in categories, the categories of leadership, the categories of technical knowledge, supervision, and we're also, because you have to have so many hours now, we're going to give you some credit and let you document some of this through your work in the AAPSL and the AAPTEL. So that's good. So when are you going to do this? Well, you're going to do your log every day. I'm going to tell you as a principal, documentation is one of the best things you're going to ever do for yourself. That needs to be thorough and accurate documentation. And having worked in HR, you need to use when you're documenting and you're maybe taking notes in an interview, the exact words people use. If someone says, "Oh, that was fabulous," then you don't write "it was great." They said fabulous. You use their words. You don't paraphrase when you're taking scripting, when you're doing things. So when you need to document every day, and I know that it takes time, and I know that 90% of the time, you don't ever have to go back to that documentation and look at it. But you better rest assured that when you need to go back to that documentation, you're going to be glad you have it. And when you do that log every day and you do your log and you keep up with your log every day, these are some competencies that's demonstrating. That's demonstrating that you are personally responsible for your performance, because as a school administrator, as a principal, you don't really have a supervisor standing over you while you're working. You have to be personally responsible for your performance without direct supervision. That also shows that you are managing your time, you have good time management, and it also is a reflection of your organizational ability. So your first 100 hours, and you do have to have 200 hours this semester, your first 100 hours has to be submitted on the log with the site supervisor signature and date no later than March the 9th, 2025, and then your last 200 hours by April 20th, 2025. And where are you going to put your competency log? Well, you're going to put that in your competency folio and Taskstream, and we're going to talk about that next week because you're just now getting your accounts. So that's fine. So you're going to do your logs, experiences on your log, and you're going to upload those twice in Taskstream in the competency folio, and we'll look at that. How are you going to do that? You're going to do that, your log, through engagement, through proactive behaviors, and through a strong work ethic, right? You can't just sit back and wait for something to come to you. You are going to have to look, you're going to see the areas that you're going to need to be getting experiences in, and you're going to need to work collaboratively with your school administrator to say, "Hey, these are some areas I still need some more time in." So you will do that and you will document that. And why do you have to do this? Well, it's required for your licensure. So there you go. So you're going to have to document this in Taskstream for your licensure. Your competency folio will be submitted. Please keep in mind, well, we'll talk about that next week in your competency folio. But anyway, so that is there. These notes are there in week 2 for you. Now I'm going to switch over. If I did not just start sharing a new screen, please let me know, because sometimes the screens don't flip in Blackboard when you, in Zoom when you flip. Right now, you should see a document that says MSA Internship Requirements, Cohort Beginning Spring 2025. So if you don't see that, somebody please unmute.
It's there.
Oh, good, thanks. All right, so you have to have at least 500 clinical internship hours in this whole year long of your course, right? And these have to be in the roles and responsibilities of a school leader, again, not a teacher. So you're going to do 200 hours this semester, you'll do 100 hours this summer, and you're going to do 200 hours in the fall of 2025. So these are going to be based on your clinical experiences, going to be reflective of the 21 competencies for school leaders. And again, these 21 competencies are essential for you to possess to be a successful school leader. Now, we're going to structure those around leadership, technical knowledge, supervision, and we're going to let you use some of your evidence artifact work from your AAPSL and AAPTEL. You have to maintain your logs, and we're going to give you some help with this. So this time, you have 200 hours this semester. So 100 of your hours can come from your AAPSL and AAPTEL. So task 1, what you're working on right now, you can use 10 hours, like your times for your PLCs, your time for your data dig, whatever it is that you're doing, the research that you did on your school profile, you can document that and you can use 10 hours of your internship log for that. So keep that in mind there. And then you see your APTEL work. Now,
Dr.
so that's,
Hamilton, if
yes,
I'm doing work at home by myself, can I count that as as part of my hours?
like what?
If I'm doing my research work at home, my assignment work, my homework cannot be counted as a part of your 10 hours. It must be leadership opportunities.
Thank you for clarifying that. Correct.
Yeah.
So this is like you're leading your PLC, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
Thank you for that, Dr. Stedman. So that's that. So then that's 100 hours from your APSL and APTEL. Then the remaining 100, because remember you have 200 this semester, you need a minimum of 70 hours in leadership opportunities, 20 hours from technical knowledge, and 10 hours from supervision. Now, again, this is when they are due. Now, what are leadership opportunities? Let's scroll down.
Dr. Hamilton, while
Yes.
you're doing that, there's an error in that. It should be a maximum number of 10 hours from supervision. It says minimum number of 10 hours. We meant to change that. Do you see that when the remaining 100 hours?
Well, you know what? I wondered about that. And then I thought, well, at least 70, 20, and 10. So that makes 100. And then I
Right.
thought if anything over, but you can't, I mean, you can, if you have more than 10 hours, you still have to have this 70 and 20, right?
Right. Exactly. Perfect.
Thank you. So yeah, I wondered about that. Thank you for saying that, but I wondered about that. So anyway, okay, what are leadership opportunities? So I want you to scroll on down on this document, and you're going to go through summer and fall. Scroll on down and we have some ideas for you down here. So here are some leadership examples. And not only do we have some examples for your leadership 70 hours, but we've also sort of aligned this with some of the competencies that will help you know, which competency that is. Here are some ideas for supervision. And we've aligned that with some competencies and then some ideas for technical knowledge. So that's there. If we ever, for the love of Pete, ever have to go back to some kind of virtual learning, there are some ideas for virtual learning. And here is another handy dandy. So look at this. So this says competency folios from your evidences. So from AAPSL Task 1, see this? Oops, I didn't mean to move that. Oh dear, let's see. From AAPSL Task 1, you'll see some things like your PLC agenda, PLC minutes, pictures of your PLC. What competencies do those align with? Okay, well, I know competency 1 is communication. Oh, I communicated via email to my principal to get permission to start a PLC. Okay, then when you're working with task 2, here are some things that you could use as your 10 hours for task 2, task 3, task 4. So that reference is there. And then at the bottom of this, also, again, we have relisted the competencies for you with a brief description of each competency there. I also have a sample of an internship log for you here. Your internship logs are in week 2 of my internship shell for you, but I would suggest that you list it out. So AAPSL Task 1, I can use up to 10 hours, right? I can use up to 10 hours. And I think Dr. Revis is right. I think that should say maximum. I can use a maximum of, or whatever. Anyway, 10 hours can come from there. And that is an example of like the amount of time. Then you can just list each. This is just an example. Your leadership, your technology, like an example I used for technology was I sat with the data manager and I enter an office referral into Power School. Okay, it shows that I'm organized. I did it on the day the event happened. And it took me 15 minutes. So, and please note that you do have to have your supervisor's signature. That is an attestation that your supervisor, you do need to have, that your supervisor knows you did these things. You do have to have your hours totaled when you submit. We do your name, your supervisor's name, and the next school name. And you should be doing your internship at the school where you currently work. So I think that is a document that you can use that helps you see. And then next week we'll talk about, that's your internship. Next week we'll talk about the competency folio, which you'll be able to use a lot of your stuff from your internship and your AAPSL and your APTEL in your competency folio. But you go ahead right now and you get that Taskstream account set up, and we'll deal with that next week. Are there any questions about that?
Tara Lewis, you said that you set yours up today. You have any advice? Tara, where are you? You there, Tara? Okay, anybody else? Did anybody else set theirs up today? Okay,
Kelsey?
Megan.
Okay.
Okay, Megan, any advice? I mean, was it fast, easy?
Oh, yeah, it was really fast. You just have to go to your email, confirm, and then ask you for you to repeat your email, type a password, and then you're in.
Okay, good.
Very
So,
simple.
yeah. Dr. Hamilton, thank you so much. And I just want to remind you, you'll see, remember in all the tasks pretty much, the first, when it has 2 prompts, you do narrative work, then you have to do graphic work, visuals, proof of what you've written about. That's the same thing with what Dr. Hamilton's talked about. For task 5 of the AAPSL, you will address 12 of those 21 competencies narratively, and we'll talk about that later on. And then in the APTEL, you'll do the other 9. But you're gonna write them for Dr. Revis and me, and then you're going to actually provide artifacts. That's why it's called a folio, a picture, evidence of things for Dr. Hamilton. But we'll talk about that later on. Okay. Okay. I think Megan, do you have another question? Okay.
Yeah, so my question was about the log for the clinical hours. I downloaded a different form than the one that you showed. So I didn't know which one I was supposed to use. Are there 2 different forms? The one I downloaded, you just fill in like what you did, the competency, and the hours. Like it didn't have it broken down like the one she just showed us. Has anybody else seen that other one?
I've seen that one also. That's the one I downloaded too.
Okay.
Will you say that again? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Will you say that again?
Yeah, so the log that I downloaded from the course shell it looks different than the one that you just presented to us. Let me grab mine right here.
Yeah,
Now, the one in the course shell does not have like APTEL at the top or whatever. You would have to put that in there yourself.
Okay, so you created that.
I did. The one in the course shell.
Yeah, the one in the course shell, Dr. Hamilton, Dr. Stebbin and I added another column where they had
This is kinda what I
to
have.
use a little legend to document whether that was leadership, supervision, or technical. So I mean, that's what we had in our course shells.
Well,
But
I'll tell you what I have in.
You call that shot because you're going to look at them. So whatever you
Well,
say.
it's okay. But so week 2 ink. Log. Download. This is the one I had in the course shell, in our
Okay.
course shell. Is that what you downloaded?
I think
Yes.
you'll like. Is that what you downloaded, guys?
Okay, I just took that one and I added those headings in there.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I didn't have all the headings in that. I just did that as a sample.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. I just want to make sure I had the right log.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, Jamie.
Somewhere, and it may have been last week, you guys said we can go back to the beginning of January. Is that correct?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else?
Oh, can I share one more thing?
Sure.
Dr. Revis had emailed me and then I had failed to remember to say something about it when we went into it. but, let me just get that, just so I can try to make sure I'm in the right place. So just one more thing back to, APA. So when you go to Gardner Webb, to the gardnerwebb.edu, go to library, right? And then you come right here, citation style guide. Make sure you go to APA, and then that's where you can find some APA references. And right here's also where you can find that video for the hanging indent. So make sure that you're using these, this resource from our library. Make sure you have clicked on APA style right there.
Hey guys, do you feel more comfortable this week than you did last week going into are you feeling okay? Yeah, I mean, you feel comfortable going into your work. You know what you've got to do. It's just doing it. And you're going to do fine. Just remember, we've gone through hundreds and hundreds of students right where you are, and they did it. Okay. Thank you again for your attentiveness tonight. You've paid close attention. Good questions. I feel good where you are. I think we're going to get some good work this week, Dr. Revis.
Yeah, so I guess if you feel good about everything, you can go ahead and log off. And Brandon, you and I are going to stay and talk.
Okay, Jacob, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm still rather confused on the internship stuff. Dr. Hamilton, I'm gonna send you an email and see if that will help me.
Okay.
I feel like I've done things, but because I didn't have the full information 2 weeks ago, I've missed a lot of opportunities to get 100 hours in a month and 4 days, and it's just a little nerve-wracking.
I think you just take what you've done and you figure out where you can fill that in.
Well, it's about, I mean, just trying to figure out if I can't count hours I did at home when I was on snow days for 3 days doing
Okay.
It's going to
work
depend
like
on what that was, Jacob.
what was that the AAPSL Task 1 work is what I was working on those snow days.
Okay. Remember, if you're doing homework, that's not a part of your internship.
Now, Dr. Stedman, am I right? Because we just started letting students, they used to just have to have 200 hours over the course of the year. Okay. Now it's 5. Am I right? Was it 2? Have I forgotten? So we've just started letting students use work from the APTL and the APSL. So you don't have to have 100 hours from APTL and APSL. Is that right, Dr. Stedman?
No, you can have up to that. It can come from other opportunities.
They can come from other things. So we thought that was the only way that we thought we were just trying to help students get their time, right? By adding the APSL and the APTL in there, right?
Right.
So it doesn't, you don't have to have, I think Dr. Revis is right. I think those words should say maximum instead of minimum. Right, Dr. Revis? Or
Right, particularly for the supervision.
I
Because
think the biggest concern is supervision. We don't want 200 hours of bus duty. Okay.
Right. You're limited to now your supervisor may tell you you've got to do cafeteria duty or bus duty or car rider duty every day, but you can only document at most in a semester 10 hours of supervision.
Right, but you don't have to have 100 hours from APSL and APTEL.
And
That
it
can
can't be
come
the
leadership or technical knowledge. You could add that to leadership or technical knowledge. I've
and
lost
whatever
Jacob,
it
he
is,
moved.
even if it's 10, it can't be the same thing 10 times. It can't be 10 hours of the same thing. There must be diversity in what you're doing.
Right. That's the main point, Jacob, is diversity and lots of different things. But you email me or call me, we'll work it out. You're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. You'll be just fine. We can
Casey?
take what you've done and work with it.
Casey, do you have a question? Can't hear you, Casey. Okay.
Oh, no.
We can hear you.
Okay, while Casey's figuring it out, Reggie.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
hold off, Reggie. Go ahead, Casey.
Okay, sorry about that. So my question is just looking ahead. So my kind of my county, my school district, they are already looking at summer staffing, things like that. What does the internship portion look like over the summer?
So typically when I've hosted several students, as me being the principal supervisor during the summer, the students would just come to work during the summer and I would give them duties like to help me with class placements, managing custodial staff during the summer, working with parents on enrollment during the summer, determining what grade levels teachers were going to be in, what they're going to be teaching, interviewing staff members, creating interview questions, preparing for the interview, getting the panel together, helping with making recommendations in the online format, collecting references, trying to review resumes. Those kinds of things are just big things that stick out to
Handbooks.
me. Do what?
Helping with your handbooks.
Handbooks, yes. Like organizing summer contacts to parents and families, especially new families that are coming in, helping to organize and construct like open house events and things like that.
Okay, thank you all. That was very helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay, Reggie.
Thanks. I just have a clarifying question about the leadership competency. If my principal and I have discussed me doing content level PDs, can that count?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
You're
Sonia.
welcome.
Yes, I'm a certified evaluator where I go evaluate teachers with a 4.0 rubric here in South Carolina. Could I count my evaluations as part of my internship?
Yes. And I would also suggest that all of you take some time to be the principal leader in a staff meeting. Those are other good leadership because you have to prepare, you have to have your agenda, and you be the leader of the staff meeting.
And I would
When I
just
did
say,
my
Sonia,
internship, my principal had me do it, and I never realized I was scared to death.
and I would just say, Sonia, make sure that's not all you do. You get a wide variety. of
Correct,
things.
Dr. Evis. Thank you for adding that clarity. Yes.
Okay, Della.
My question is about the data dive. We had our meeting today and we looked at basically our schedule is kind of weird because we had to cram like the 2 meetings that I was supposed to have this week into one. And we pretty much did like the most pressing need, the data collection strategies and the collaborative data analysis. And we came to the conclusion because like 3 years in a row, our 7th grade has been low performing and they have not exceeded growth. They have been in the red for 3 years. And then we also have discovered that there's a particular subgroup in the 7th grade that has like not even shown any growth. And that's the academically, intellectually gifted students. So can we use a subgroup or do we have to, okay, because we have, thank you, because that group is like crazy, like, and I teach some of those kids and we all were talking about like how we see it in our classes and we were looking at the data and we were like, it makes sense.
Yes, but yes, subgroups are very appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because we didn't know if like the subgroup was appropriate. Like we kept going, we had good dialogue because we have to do our PLCs during our planning, just like how the content teachers do it during their planning.
Right. Okay, good.
that's what I wanted to make sure before, because like before we go on, because I told him, I was like, I got class tonight. I'm putting all this information. We had good talks, but before we go down this rabbit hole, I want to talk to my professors to make sure. 'Cause my principal, he's giving me free reign. He's like, I trust you. You're a good school leader. Just call me if you need it. He's a part of our PLC. So
Good. That's good. Yes. Okay, Jordan.
Thank you.
Good evening. I've got a quick clarifying question. The hours when we are counting things for the AAPSL project. So you said we can't use anything that is homework, but is hours that we spend diving into the data on our own is time spent prepping our presentations to deliver to them? Is that considered homework, or is that acceptable?
That can be considered part of the leadership process.
Okay.
The data dives.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So like if we spent 10 plus hours diving into data because we don't work at the school we're at, we could count those hours towards
preparing for your PLC can be part of your hours.
Okay.
And I think what Dr. Revis said is pivotal. You don't want the whole 10 hours to be the data dive, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Okay, Megan, do you have another question? Okay, your hand was still up. Okay. Guys, everybody good?
I think Brandon wants to stay. We need to talk just a
Okay.
minute.
Okay.
But you can stop recording if you want to.
I will.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Thank y'all.